Whatever rocks your socks, whatever spins your top, whatever winds your watch, whatever flips your flop, whatever turns you on, whatever flies your flag, whatever bangs your gong, or whatever swings your bag. Do it often, but do it well, 'cause nobody knows and there's no way to tell when the ride ends.
Good morning. It's Friday, April 14th, 2023. I've put off doing this video because yesterday was Songkran, the first day of Songkran here on Turtle Beach. And I was out in front of my house from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, standing barefoot on concrete, throwing water and getting water thrown at me. Had a hell of a time. I still got water on my glasses. How about that? But all that time on concrete has inflamed my plantar fasciitis. Just another one of Steve's infirmities, many infirmities. And I woke up at about 2 this morning and my feet were on fire. So I took 2 tramadol at 2 in the morning. And it's, it's about 6:30, quarter to 7 now. And I woke up at 4:30 like I always do. And I was still tramadoled. And my feet feel better. But if I meander in this monologue, forgive me. You know, the thing, there's a lot of pissing and moaning on the internet by Farang, particularly old white male Farang, about the childish behavior and the danger of Songkran, the 7 days of danger, Tetwan Antarai. A lot of people die. Many, many, many people will die in these days. And, you know, our white linear A to B to C to D thinking says, well, we should not do that. This is the same linear thinking that allows any teenage cowboy in Texas to walk into McDonald's strapped with guns, but here we complain about the way they behave, that it's dangerous. You know, the thing they're not recognizing is this is a release. This is a safety valve. This is amok time, if you know Star Trek. This is a rigidly controlled society, right? There's a million rules here, way more rules about social interaction here than there are where we come from. Don't touch anybody's head, don't point with your feet. Which of the 7 pronouns that mean you will I employ when I address you? There are a million rules here about social intercourse, and that, of course, I've lectured before. That all stems from rice cultivation and the communal necessity of doing that in large groups. If a man pissed off, for the last 10,000 years, if a man pissed off his neighbors and relatives, they didn't come help him with his rice, and he starved. He and his family starved. So getting along, not making waves, not being a problem, smiling all the time, became rigidly inculcated in this society. You need a release. Once a year, you need to go out in the street and let all those rules go. Can you touch somebody's head? Yeah, if you're patting, you know, green powder on their face, yeah, you can touch their head. If they're a young lady and you're a young man, you might touch them somewhere else, which is verboten. There is no other time in your life that you are allowed to publicly touch a woman who you're not related to, right? You throw water, sing, shout, dance, get it all out of your system for a day, 3 days, 10 days, as much water as your municipality will allow you to waste. And you get all that out of your system. There's a thing in Japan, a custom that I have heard of. I have never lived in Japan, but as I understand it, it is required of senior managers in Japanese companies to once a year take their middle managers out for drinks, one at a time, privately, get the guy drunk, and in that situation, he may say anything he wants, knowing there will be no repercussions at work. It's the only time a senior manager will ever hear the truth from his middle managers. because they're not allowed to bring bad news. That's not your job. Your job is to bring good news. So you never bring the boss bad news. Once a year, you can tell him what's going on in the office. You can tell him how you feel, that you want a raise, that you want family leave, whatever. Once a year, you can let go in Japan. So here, once a year, you let go of all of these rules. And they're conscious of the fact that they live in this very restricted society, in these very tightly controlled lives. And they look forward to being able to, go nuts at Songkran. So you Farang who don't like it, stay home. Don't go out in the street. It's not going to kill you to watch Netflix for a day or two. And let them have their release. They haven't had it in 3 years. They've got all this pent up, cooped up, rigid conformity pressing them down. And this year, boom, they're going to let it go. And good for them. Good on them, I say. My feet, I got a million ailments. And part of that is hypochondria. Part of that is living, for 20 years. I was a medical transcriptionist. And 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, I listened to death, doom, disease. I listened to doctors describing their encounters with patients. And a lot of those encounters were not going to end well. And I followed a lot of people, many, many, many people through diagnosis, treatment, and death. People I never met, but I knew them because every day for months I was recording their chemo and everything else that was going on. And you listen to that, it's going to have an effect on you. It's going to make you kind of a dark person if you let it. And so I've got a lot of quirks and ailments and infirmities that I deal with. But I also got a real good layman's education in medicine in those years. And a lot of good memories, a lot of good stories. In 1983, I was an orderly in a psychiatric hospital. University of Iowa Psychiatric Hospital. An adult unit, a 30-bed adult unit, a locked unit. And my job was to sit around and talk to the patients, which I found fascinating, record what they told me, and wait for someone to go nuts and try to kill somebody else with a chair. Then we'd knock them down and hold them down on the floor until the nurse came with a needle. And we had one of these violence management episodes. It was a young man, a wrestler on the University of Iowa wrestling team, very fit, very strong, very able, very knowledgeable, and well-trained fighter. And he started making noise and throwing furniture. So 3 of us tried to take him down, and he shrugged us off like we were gnats. And we were all big guys. I've never been, in college I was bulky, I lifted weights, but for the most part I've just been a big fat guy. And typically the way that works for you in a physical altercation is you start moving in one direction and you don't stop. And you grab somebody and you take them with you until you meet an obstruction. And then you just bang them on that obstruction a few times. And you get enough momentum going, your inertia will carry you through the moment. About once a week, we'd have to take somebody down. And I got banged up now and then. I was bitten, the worst injury, I was bitten by a man who was dying of tertiary syphilis. And they said I had a 50-50 chance of getting syphilis from the bite because the organism lives in your saliva. And so I had to take syphilis tests. Somewhere there's a medical record that says in 1983, Steve took a battery of syphilis tests. Happily, I wasn't hurt. Another injury, excuse me, the tramadol. And dehydration. I didn't drink enough yesterday. I got enough dirty water in my mouth. I didn't drink enough. On another occasion, this woman who weighed about 300 pounds, I had long hair. I still had my hippie long hair in 1983. And she was sitting in a chair, and I was trying to get her up to go to the cafeteria to have lunch. You can't serve lunch until all 30 patients are in the cafeteria because there's plastic knives in there. You got to frisk everybody when they leave. So you get them in all at once, you get them out all at once. She wouldn't get up from her chair. She was reading her Bible. She wouldn't get up from her chair. And nobody could eat. Nobody could sit down until she got up and joined us. So I kept asking her, come on, come on, come on. And she just kept reading her Bible, And I didn't know what I had not met this woman yet. Her deal was she believed that she was responsible for all the evil and pain in the world. Every flood, fire, famine, every rape, murder, robbery, she was responsible for it because she didn't read her Bible enough. So she believed she had to read a certain number of Bible chapters every day. She was just trying to finish her last chapter. She couldn't stop reading to tell me, give me 2 minutes. She just kept looking down at her Bible. So I reached down, I snapped that Bible shut. I said, you come with me. And she reached up, calm as a cucumber. She reached up, she grabbed my hair, and she came off that chair, buckled her knees, and went face down on the carpet. And it was like having 300 pounds attached to your head. Wham! And she broke my glasses, and it gouged I used to have a scar right there, and busted my lip open, and I thought my nose was broken. It turned out it wasn't. But she put me face down in that carpet hard. And so, yeah, shit like this happened. And one day we had this young man, this young wrestler. Jesus, I'm at 10 minutes already. We had this young wrestler, and he was bouncing off the walls, and 3 of us were trying to take him down. It was about midnight. It was just the night crew on. And we couldn't get this guy down. He went up and down the hallways, in and out of other patients' rooms. And we finally got him down on the tile. And he's on his belly, that's how you do it, and 2 guys on his arms, 1 guy on his legs, and we're waiting for the nurse with the needle. And we're all going, and he looks over his shoulder at me, and he says, man, I feel a lot better. How about you? And I said, yeah, I do feel better. Get a little exercise. Yeah, I feel better. That was exciting. I broke up the shift, yeah. And I think that's how, that's the purpose of Songkran. I feel better. I went nuts. I bounced Steve off a wall a couple times, and it made me feel better. I hit Steve in the face with a bucket full of ice water. Made me feel better. So that's Songkran, man. I had another story to tell you about Dorothy, a quadriplegic woman I took care of. In 1983, I got fired from the psychiatric hospital, and what it says in the permanent record that's somewhere in a filing cabinet at the University of Iowa, Steve Rosse's personality encourages inappropriate behavior in the manic patients. I was too crazy to work in the crazy hospital. So they took me downstairs, and the nurse manager said, give me your key to the unit. And I looked through her office doorway, and she had this pebbled glass, where they put wire inside the glass. And on the other side were 2 orderlies like me, guys I'd worked with for a year. And they were standing nervously outside the door. And I realized she'd called them in case Steve wouldn't give up his key to the unit. I had gone from staff to patient like that. And a patient has no rights. You have no civil liberties in a psychiatric hospital. You are completely at the whim of your physicians. And I said, yeah, here's the key. Here's my wallet. Here's my pants. Whatever you want, just let me out of here. And that was the end of my employment at the psychiatric hospital. So I looked in the newspaper, the student newspaper, and there was an ad for a quadriplegic woman in New York City who needed 24-hour caretakers. She couldn't move from the neck down. And I took the job. I was a qualified nursing assistant and a big guy, and she was a big woman, and you had to move her around in the bed and get her in and out of chairs, do chair transfers and stuff, and bathe her and put in her tampons and everything else. And so she hired me, and I went out there, and I lived for about 3 months with her. And it was an introduction to New York City. It was a way for a boy from Iowa to get to New York City and have an apartment to live in and have some money to spend. And I had 3.5 days off every week. You're on duty 24 hours a day, 3.5 days, and then you're off for 3.5 days. And there's another guy in the apartment, and you cycle around. And when I got there, I had understood she was completely immobile. She was a polio victim, and she was completely immobile from the neck down. She could feel everything. Her sensory nerves were still fine. She just couldn't move. But she could move her right hand like a spider. She could crawl that hand like this. It was the creepiest thing. And the only thing she could do for herself was pick her nose. And every day, once a day, you would put a tissue on her shoulder and you would hold her arm up to her face, and then you'd look away. And she would clean her nose and wipe it on the tissue, right? And it was really important to her to do that every day, because that's all she could do for herself. That was the only self-care she could perform. And I think about Dorothy a lot. She had been a concert pianist. She'd been a child prodigy on the piano. She was touring the world by 18. And that's when she started to feel numbness in her fingertips. And within a year, she was completely immobile. At the age of 19, I knew her. She was 54 years old. She'd spent her life on her back in a bed. And she made a real good living translating Harlequin romance novels into Japanese. She had a reading machine over her bed, and she controlled it with her jaw. And she was fluent in Japanese. She'd grown up in Japan. And she would read romance novels all day long and translate them into a microphone. And some transcriptionists back in Japan would then type these up and they'd be published. Japanese women are starving for romance, right? The Japanese culture does not include any romance towards women. And they're starving for it. Gone with the Wind is the most popular movie in history in Japan. Right, a defeated nation, all the men are dead, and the women have to rebuild the nation by themselves. That resonates with Japanese women. And in the end, love does not work out, and she lives the rest of her life alone. Scarlett does. And that's how Japanese women were living after the Second World War. So Gone with the Wind and the whole idea of Western romance is huge in Japan. So Dorothy made a real good living translating romance novels. But I think about Dorothy. Retirees, there's a conversation online among retirees and potential retirees. What do you like about Thailand? Well, I like the food. I like the climate. I like the ethic of Buddhism. I like the women or men, whatever. I like cheap alcohol. I like being able to sit in front of the 7-Eleven at 9 o'clock in the morning without a shirt on, drinking a big chong out of the bottle. Whatever it is you like. What I like is agency, all right? I like having control over my life. I like making my own decisions. I have not decided where I would live since 1997. I lived in a house my mother gave me because I couldn't get a job that would allow me to afford a house big enough for a family. And then after my family was grown, I went down to New Mexico. Mom got sick, and I went and lived in her guest bedroom for 8 years. I did not choose to. Depending on your definition of the word to choose. I did not choose to live that way. And now I have chosen to live here on Turtle Beach in an old sushi restaurant on the beach. I made that choice. Whether or not this is a comfortable place to live, whether or not you would live in a home that is basically one big room and take over half that room with dolls and toys and sets and make videos with dolls and toys and sets. Whether you would choose to do that or not is immaterial. What you think of me choosing to do that is immaterial. The important thing is I chose to do that. I choose when to eat every day, what to eat every day, where to live, where to rent my motorcycle. Do I ride the bicycle this morning down the beach, or do I walk down the beach? Every single day I make 1,000 little decisions that Dorothy was never able to make for herself, that a lot of people in the world, because of economic or social situations or gender situations or family situations, are not able to make. Right now, I'm at a point in my life where I can make every single decision for myself, and holy God, does that feel good. That's me picking my nose, baby. That's what I can do for myself now, and I'm going to do it every single minute of every single day going forward, as many days as whoever allows me to have. I'm going to make my own choices. I'm going to make my own decisions, and I don't give a rat's ass what anybody thinks of those decisions. Hello, Clive. Anybody in the comment section, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your comment. But honest to God, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. All right? Agency, control over your own life, making your own decisions. And I'll tell you something, when every single Thai person I meet says, why do you live alone? Why don't you have a wife? Why don't you have a girlfriend? Why don't you at least have a maid you screw in the afternoons? Because I want to make my own decisions. And as soon as you let another person into your life, they're going to start making decisions for you, or you're going to start making your decisions based on what they want. And that's beautiful. If you're in love and your life is tailored around satisfying your partner, good on you. Good for you. You know, you found the golden fleece. That's great. I don't have that. I don't want that. Right now, what I want is agency. I want control over my own life. And I found it, and I love it every day. All right, that's it. Listen, after this, I'm going to show you some photos. If you're still here, thank you. Thank God. Thank you. I really appreciate your attention. Like, subscribe, share. I'm going to show you some photos of people who've dropped by Boontong's bar this week and taken selfies in front of Boontong's bar. And I suppose that sort of video essay would work better on a Boontong's video. But what the hell? I'm going to put it here now. I'm going to stick it on the end of this. And so I'm very grateful to people who come and show up and take a selfie and they check in. Boontong's is on Google Maps. You can check in. I'm very grateful to those people. So that's what's coming up. Next week, a Boontong's video, I'm going to do another story by Colin Pipperell. He has a book called Bangkok Nights, which is a collection of short stories, all of them set in bars. And it's kind of tough to pick one out because what I'm discovering is all of these scenes, Farang writers write, of a man and woman meeting in a bar are the same thing. First of all, they're nothing but dialogue. He said, she said, he said, she said, nothing happens. I'm already working in Tableau. It's a very still production. It's hard to inject action into these videos, into this particular trope, the boy meets girl in a bar trope. But Colin did it particularly well, and I think I can find a story in Bangkok Nights that will satisfy. So that's next week. Again, thank you very much. I love you guys, man. I do. You guys just make me so happy. The fact that a few people will sit with me through these little monologues and let me vent, it means the world to me. Thank you very much. I love you guys. Have a terrific week. Happy New Year, and stay dry.
Whatever shaves your sheep, whatever bakes your lamb, whatever digs your peak, whatever smokes your ham, whatever blows your nose, whatever chews your bone, whatever squirts your hose, whatever sings your song. Do it often, but do it well. Nobody knows and there's no way to tell. When you're riding, it's that you be doing down, you be doing that.